My mother loved her father-in-law. I remember that she always tried to give him an extra piece of fried fish, one of his favorite foods, when my grandmother wasn't looking, as she wouldn't have approved. As a child, I always remember the careful balancing act that we performed in order to spend equal time with my paternal grandparents as well as with Opa Breuer. After all, my father was an only child, and we therefore the only grandchildren. On the other hand, it was much more fun for us when we went to 50 Overlook. But my mother was always very careful to make sure that her in-laws received the proper attention and respect that was their due. In their later years, it was my mother who single-handedly organized and arranged my grandparents' move from 270 Fort Washington Avenue to an apartment down the hall from us at 56 Bennett. Although my grandfather only lived in that apartment for a few months, it was because he was so nearby that my parents were able to help my grandmother take care of him and make his last days much more comfortable surrounded by his family. From that time on, until she was no longer able to, my grandmother ate every Shabbos with my parents. Years later, during my father's illness and after he passed away, my mother, who herself had difficulty walking by then, insisted on going over to my grandmother every Shabbos morning to visit, and she always inquired for me to make sure that my grandmother was well taken care of. She set a true example of kibbud av v'goyim. After her immediate family, of course, came her siblings. She loved her brothers and sisters and always looked forward to talking to them or getting together with them. She had a slightly different relationship with each one, but got along with all of them. As we all know, it sometimes did happen on rare occasions that one of our aunts and uncles got delighted with one another. But I really can't recall that happening to my mother. She had a special close relationship with Tante Meta, due partly to their physical proximity to each other and also their closeness in age. I don't think a day went by when they didn't speak. Tante Meta always was and continues to be a sort of surrogate mother for us, and we hope that this relationship will continue for many years. Lastly, my mother was very proud of the contribution she was able to make to her community. As a young boy, I remember her as a member of the school hot lunch program. She was a class mother, and despite being a working mother, which was quite rare in those days, she managed to help out whenever she could. Shortly before she became ill, she joined the Ladies' Chevra Kadisha, and again, due to her job, she was always on call in the evenings and on Sundays when the Chevra services was needed. She served in this capacity with pride for quite a number of years. My mother often helped people quietly without any fanfare. I remember one case of an elderly woman who had little or no family. She was in the hospital for a long time. When my mother heard about her, she took it upon herself to visit her every single day during her lunch hour as she worked next door, bringing her magazines and other small gifts. When this woman passed away, my mother asked my father and I to go to the Levaya with her and to go out to the Beis HaKvaros, as there weren't many people who would be there. This was a lesson in Gemilas Chesed, which I have never forgotten. During the Shiva and in the days following, we heard so many wonderful stories about my mother. But the common description of her, which recurred over and over again, was of her ever-present smile and caring personality. We received many letters, but I would like to quote to you from just one of them. This came from a man who grew up in 56 Bennett Avenue and is now married with a family of his own. And I quote, "She possessed a warm personality, a caring disposition, and a keen sense of dignity that she always carried with her during the difficult days of her illness. I can recall her easy smile and the concern she always had for everyone else, most certainly for her family, her neighbors within 56 Bennett Avenue, and the entire membership of her beloved Kehillah. I clearly recall during my early days, that is, even when my age was measured with a single digit, that when I would meet her, whether on the street or in our apartment building, she would always warmly greet me and talk to me. Despite the large age gap that existed between us, she always had time for me and treated me as if I was a friend. But only after I grew a bit older was I able to reflect and appreciate the enormity of her patience and the beautiful way that she led her life. In reality, she could more accurately be described as a mentor, teaching us all how we should live our lives," unquote. At my bar mitzvah almost 38 years ago, before my mother became ill, Uncle Mark, in his speech, described my mother so beautifully and simply. I remember him saying that he had rarely seen anyone like her, who no matter what happened was always happy. Not as he said, Nevish, what can I do? But genuinely happy. And he cited the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Ezehu Oshir Hasomeach V'chalko. Who is rich? He who rejoices in his portion. As our Hirsch explains, money does not give pleasure. It just makes possible all future enjoyment. A person who is wealthy can spend his time wanting more and more money until the point where the lack of what he does not now possess may actually mar his joy in what he does have at present. Yet it is precisely this joy in what one possesses, this contentment with one's portion in life, that constitutes the only genuine treasure and the sole true happiness in life. Without this, even the richest man will remain poor, even with all his money. This was our mother, both before and certainly after she became ill. She never complained, never questioned. She accepted her portion, not with an attitude of, Nevish, what can I do? But with a smile and a determination to go on with life and live it in the best way she could, for herself, her family, and everyone who came in contact with her. In his essay, Hamokum Yinachtam Osav, Upa, based on Rav Hirsch, explains that Nechama means both consolation and regret. Both words mean a change of feeling to the way one had felt towards something until now. Regret occurs when until now one had considered something to be right, and then suddenly realizes that one has to be ashamed of it. Similarly, real consolation occurs only when one who has suffered great pain becomes convinced that this too leads to ultimate good. If one realizes that were one able to see all conditions, results and consequences as Hashem can and does, one could not alter what has happened even if one could. So we see that Nechama is a change of feelings such that one can comprehend the incomprehensible. But man is not capable of offering such a nechama. That is why we say Hamakom Yinachem. It is only Hamakom, Hashem, who can offer such consolation. Understanding and accepting this, we feel truly comforted, just as our mother, grandmother, sister, aunt, and cousin showed us through her life the ultimate example of true acceptance of the will of Hashem. We too can take true comfort by realizing that all that Hashem does is for the best. And even though we may not completely understand this with our limited vision, we look forward to the time when all will be made clear to us. Bila ha'movas l'netzach, u'mocha Hashem dima me'al kol panim, v'viyas kol tzedek v'her b'yomeinu. Amen.